Right, hi guys. So this is this is chapter 3, and really the heart of this, the heart of chapter 3, is very much about the levels at which information is understood and appreciated in an organization. As you can imagine, there must be fundamentally different levels in an organization in terms of direction, if you like, and we'll see that as we carry on. But you know how sometimes I like to do a bit of talking just before we dig in. But there will always be your people who are driving the very strategic direction of the business in terms of where do you go and invest, and who sorts out the key funding for the running of the organization. And then you'll have your middle management who are able to implement a lot of these and manage, if you like, the groundwork or the ground force. So you're operational. And so if you think of it that way, you can understand that they would all need information at different levels. And that's essentially what we're really looking at. And so this is referred to as, this chapter is titled Information Systems and Data Analytics. So what are the objectives? The key thing, first of all, our aim is to identify the 3 levels of planning, which I mentioned earlier on in decision making. So you saw me draw that. It's actually called the Anthony Triangle by a professor at Harvard. And he sort of said that you have decisions being made. I mean, there is a cascade, of course. I mean, ultimately, a budget is really what we call a budget is a numerical cascade of what's going on up here, right down to the operational, right? Like a breaking down of these bigger aims. Right. So you have the strategic up here. You have the tactical in the middle. As I mentioned earlier on, middle management, who will actually implement. And then you have your operational. And so our focus really is looking at those information systems at those different levels. And again, even everything, you know, the type of accounting information that is required at these different levels would be different. So we're trying to connect the appropriate accounting information requirements at these different levels, and the appropriate types of information systems, as I said earlier on, at these three levels. So obviously, you can see here, you can already start to see that something like this transaction processing must be already happening at the operational level. So if you see that in a question, you know straight away what they're talking about. Then, of course, you need management to make decisions. And so they need systems that are able to capture data, that are able to analyze that data. So kind of carrying on from chapter 2, they want to be able to carry out analysis. I mean, of course, we'll break it down, what's really happening here, but management information systems really are typically required by middle management and, of course, senior management as well. We'll talk about that. And executive information systems. So these are specialized systems. And we'll come and talk about that. But even again, just talking about it, dropping hints, this idea of executive should help you understand that this is happening in the strategic. But also, I guess the question here is, what would people who are making strategic decisions, what type of information would they want? Well, they'd want to understand their external and internal environment. So the question is, we want software or systems that are able to capture information around in our industry. So we want news from the general industry being fed into this software. So we can, and then we also want information on what's going on internally. We probably have more control, as you can imagine, of course, on the internal and what systems we implement. But we definitely want systems that can capture what our competitors are doing, what our buyers are doing, what our suppliers are doing, what the general economy is looking like. So that's what's really happening here. So quite important systems here, typically used, of course, by your strategic level management. Then ERP systems, I've talked about in chapter 2, I talked about how SAP and Oracle have been developing, or have developed for many years now. I'm sure there are others, systems that are able to help organizations integrate their different systems, and several intranets and extranets with their suppliers. So you're able to see what's going on with your supplier in China and how long it'll take to arrive. And then you're up to the point where your customer is able to actually see this. So when you tell him it's going to take 2 days, they can see why. And they can even help them with their own planning. So that's what's really going on here with the ERP systems. And of course, CRMs, of course, this is what I was saying. So customer relationship management systems are where you have created systems, or you have systems in place, pretty much, I guess, a database of sorts, and a refined database that has now so fully understood your client that you're able to specifically tailor demand. We then go on to look at data, big data. This is a big issue, big. We have so much information, we have so much news. I think we'll see the figures coming through. So what an organization wants to do is to be able to take this data, analyze it, turn it into information. There's so much of it. So the whole idea is we're trying to enhance decision making. I mean, it's not always just about making money. Just even, we've talked so much about, even in science, this having all this data enables us to understand diseases better, build medicines. So there's a lot. There's a lot of uses of this in any industry, ultimately. But the key point, it helps with decision making. You're able to understand what the problems are if you have so much data and you can analyze it, right? So like I said earlier on, the levels of planning of strategic management, management planning and control, and operational control. So this is also referred to as your tactical level. But you have your strategic up here and your operational here. Your textbook kind of arranges it like this. It sort of says tactical, and you have these three. But you can see that the planning shifts. You have more planning happening, if you like, is at this kind of level here. And then more control happening here. So, and then that's kind of your driver, and your structure of thinking about this. So what is the strategic planning? I said earlier on, it takes place at the top of the organization. It is fundamentally concerned with setting a future course of action for the organization. So the type of information they tend to get, of course, as you can imagine, is very much about what's the 5-year plan, if you like. Let's look at our products. Where are they on their life cycle? Do we need to sort of be looking at new markets? Do we need to be looking at new products? If you like, do we need to be looking at different market segments? And that's kind of the thinking here. So everything is still it can't be quite fixed. I mean, quite open, because we're planning and thinking. And then we have management control. And we're ultimately here trying to make sure that we're trying to think about efficiency. I think that's the buzzword. So the question here is, stuff goes in, stuff comes out. How efficiently can we get more output for what we put in? So, of course, to manage this, you have to have performance measures in place. And then, of course, look at risk analysis. So you're also looking at risks, your productivity measures, capacity utilization. That's what's really happening here. How are we going to make the best of our resources? But these guys are your real workers. They actually carry out the day-to-day implementation of those plans. So you can already imagine that the information needs or information systems for all these would be different. So in terms of information systems, strategic, involved with the monitoring and controlling the organization as a whole, tactical, implementing the decisions, and operational, controlling the day-to-day operations of the organization. Here we are again. I'm just sort of laying them out. And like I said earlier on, each level creates a different type of strategy within the organization and therefore needs different types of information as outlined. So typically, like I was saying, this is kind of moving in towards the tactical, towards the operational. With operational, we're very much about input. So just think of a ledger clerk. You want them to put exactly what it says on the invoice. No faffing around. Because you see, and we'll come to that, it's the information they put in that enables us to then carefully analyze what's going on with our products and then make bigger decisions about the future, which we don't know very much about. So you can see here, there is, and of course, depending on who's in charge, strategy is tricky, right? Because some might even with good analysis, there will still be a variation of opinion. So it's subjective, it's qualitative, if you like, it's broad, there isn't a lot of detail, really, due to the fact that we're dealing with forecasts. But of course, with operational, this is something that has happened, and we're just putting that information into the system. So typically, we expect it to be as objective and as accurate, because these are events that have happened. This is your classic management accounting role, putting in invoices and for purchases and for sales. And then, of course, managing your trade receivables, your trade payables, managing your utilities, managing your interest, that sort of thing. Interest payments. Of course, here, yes, so that's kind of the key thing there. So in summary, in terms of the strategic thinking, I think that I'm probably going to have 4 videos on chapter 3. So this is the first part 1. So typically with the strategic, what's happening up here, think 5-year plan, information from internal and external sources in order to plan the long term, thinking about new funding, new markets, new board members, new management, new tech. You can see all very long term. Tactical, think 12 months, think budgets, think every type of analysis, sensitivity analysis, net present value sort of thing, performance management, productivity, all those kind of concerns, investigation of variances, because we are trying to ensure efficiency. And operational, very much about the detailed and precise inputs for absolutely any of the systems, ranging from sales to purchase to payroll. And this is the only way the 2 higher levels will be able to make good decisions. Okay, brilliant. So that's part 1. See you in part 2.